Are you tired of mediocre tiramisu? If you are, you've come to the right place because today I'll be sharing my ultimate tiramisu recipe, and I'll also be sharing key highlights and points to pay attention to so that you can recreate this classic Italian dessert every single time perfectly in the comforts of your own home. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Crystal and I'm a pastry chef entrepreneur based in Jakarta, Indonesia. And in my channel, I share about my life as a pastry chef entrepreneur, building a business, and also share some occasional productivity tips, travel vlogs, and also recipes. It's an ongoing process, but I hope that this open journal can help provide you with insights, make better decisions, and also live better lives. In this video, we'll be making a simple but delicious tiramisu, and we'll be breaking it down into 3 parts. Firstly, components and my recipe. Secondly, ingredients and process, taste test, and variations. For those of you who would like to jump straight into the recipe, I've provided timestamps in the description box, so feel free to skip ahead. So without further ado, let's dive straight in. First part, components and my recipe. So first, I'd like to talk about the components of the tiramisu, which are 3 components. Firstly, it's the ladyfingers soaked in coffee syrup. Second, the mascarpone cream. And thirdly, the top layer, which is cocoa powder dusted on top of the cream. You could then repeat another layer of ladyfingers soaked in coffee syrup and another layer of mascarpone cream before dusting it with cocoa powder, but it's usually made up of these 3 components. So for the first component, which are the ladyfingers or savoiardi, there are 2 types. You can either make them from scratch or buy store-bought ones, but to be honest, I usually use store-bought ones because they're as delicious and are very quick and readily available in a lot of stores. For the coffee syrup, which you're soaking the ladyfingers in, usually use espresso, but if you don't have access to freshly brewed espresso, you can use instant coffee as well. And for the traditional recipe, it's usually made up of only 2 components, which are the espresso and the sugar syrup. But since I like to use a lot of liquor to add depth into the flavors of my desserts, today I'll be adding kahlua, which is a coffee liquor, to add more zing into this tiramisu. For the second component, which is the mascarpone cream, the traditional recipe uses either whole eggs or egg yolks, and they're usually used raw, but for my recipe, I usually prefer to use egg yolks because they provide a creamier and richer taste. And I usually, for food safety reasons, I usually cook the egg yolks before incorporating them into the mascarpone cream. And speaking of alcohol, what is usually used in the traditional tiramisu is white wine or sweet wine such as Marsala, which is a type of wine which is produced in the region surrounding the Italian city of Marsala in Sicily. But today, we'll be using rum. Lastly, make sure that you're using mascarpone cheese for your tiramisu because I realized that a lot of recipes these days use cream cheese instead of mascarpone, but definitely use mascarpone because it is much lighter in terms of flavor and goes well with the other strong flavored components such as coffee and alcohol much better than cream cheese. Some recipes also use gelatin to help firm up the tiramisu cream, but today I won't be using it since gelatin is quite tough to handle since it's very sensitive to temperature. If you don't incorporate it well and make sure that it's melted and stays melted before it gets incorporated with all the mascarpone cream ingredients, it might cause lumps and affect the texture of the tiramisu. So today, I'll be sharing a technique that we can use egg yolks with to provide a firm texture so that you can be sure that your tiramisu will not melt before serving. For the top and final layer, just make sure that you're using premium cocoa powder and make sure that the bottom layers are set before you dust the cocoa powder on. Second, ingredients and process. Now let's start by making the coffee syrup to soak the ladyfingers. The ingredients are simple syrup, which is made out of 1 part sugar and 2 parts water, and espresso or instant coffee mixed with water. And thirdly, coffee liquor, which is kahlua. If you're making the sugar syrup and espresso from scratch, make sure that the sugar syrup and the espresso has cooled down before adding the coffee liquor because the heat might cause the coffee liquor to lose its aroma due to the heat, and it won't be as strong in terms of flavor and in terms of the aroma. After mixing all of the ingredients, set aside. Now let's move on to the mascarpone cream, which is made out of 3 components, which is the mascarpone cream, the whipped cream, and alcohol, and also the zabaione, which is the egg yolk mixture. Firstly, let's make the zabaione. These are the ingredients of the zabaione: the sugar, egg yolks, and also water. Let's put all the ingredients together into a stainless bowl and heat it on top of a water bath and mix it until it's thick and creamy. The purpose of the water bath is to pasteurize the eggs and also thicken it while heating it to ensure that it becomes thick and creamy without overcooking the eggs. After it reaches about 80 degrees Celsius and is thick and creamy, remove it from the water bath and set aside until it cools on an ice bath. Next, let's mix the mascarpone cheese until it becomes creamy and soft before adding the whipping cream slowly until it reaches like a semi-creamy and slightly firm texture. We want to whip up the whipping cream and the mascarpone until it's about 80%, not too firm and not too soft, because this way it'll be easier for it to be incorporated into the egg yolk mixture. Be careful not to over whip your cream, especially if you're in a tropical country like I am. So when it's hot, it's easier for your cream to separate, so make sure that you have like two bowls on top of each other. The upper bowl having the whipped cream and the lower bowl with an ice bath, to make sure that it doesn't get warm while you're whipping it. Next, add the rum into this whipping cream and mascarpone mixture before adding the egg yolk mixture, the zabayone, afterwards. Finally, it's time to incorporate everything to make the mascarpone cream. Make sure that you're using a rubber spatula instead of a whisk so that we can fold everything gently so that we can keep the air bubbles that we have incorporated carefully in each step. And now that that's done, it's time to fill the mascarpone cream into a piping bag so that it's easier for you to fill the containers. Now we're finally ready to assemble. First, let's prepare the jars or the tray for your tiramisu. So today I'll be using a glass jar, and it's very perfect, especially when you have like a dinner party and are inviting friends for dinner. This would make a very perfect dessert that will be amazing in terms of taste and appearance. Your friends wouldn't expect that it's so easy to make. And then let's start soaking the ladyfingers into the coffee syrup. So make sure that you don't soak the ladyfingers too much, because they might get so soft and end up breaking while you're transferring it from the bowl of coffee syrup onto the trays. That is because you can always brush on more coffee syrup when you put the ladyfinger into the jar. Next, it's time to add the mascarpone cream that you have filled the piping bag with. Make sure that you fill it in until the corners, and finally, after you have piped all of the mascarpone cream into a layer, you can now smooth it out with a spatula. And we're done for now. Now it's time for us to leave it to rest in the fridge for at least 3 hours or overnight. I've made this last night, so it has firmed up. The cream is now firm, and now it's time to dust the cocoa powder. Now, a common problem with tiramisu is that over time, after you dust the cocoa powder will melt and be absorbed because it absorbs the moisture from the cream. But I have a tip for you, and the secret is using snow sugar. So snow sugar is a type of sugar that doesn't melt even though it's exposed to very moist surfaces such as donuts or creams. So first, we would have to put a layer of snow sugar, and now that's done. And now the cocoa powder will not absorb the moisture from the cream anymore. And voila, you can prepare your tiramisus in advance. Third, taste test and variations. Now it's finally time to try our tiramisu. It's the right balance of the airiness and creaminess of the mascarpone cheese, the coffee, and also the coffee liquor. It's just a perfect balance of bitterness, fragrance, and also the creaminess and the aroma of the rum. This is exactly the reason why you should definitely use mascarpone cheese instead of cream cheese, because cream cheese is much stronger in flavor and would interfere with the balance between the flavors of coffee liquor, and also the rum. You can also make other variations of the tiramisu, such as the matcha tiramisu, lotus biscoff tiramisu, taro tiramisu, and even the Bailey's tiramisu. And it's no wonder that it's such a popular dessert, because you can simply do so by changing up the coffee syrup and also the powder that you put on top with other ingredients to achieve many other flavors of tiramisu. Because after all, the joy of baking is the experimental side of it, where the possibilities are limitless. Here is the full recipe, so be sure to save it, and when you make your tiramisu, don't forget to tag me, because I'd really love to see your versions. Alright guys, that's it for my ultimate tiramisu recipe. If you guys are curious about my journey as a pastry chef, you might want to check out this video right here. Meanwhile, I'd really love to know what are your favorite desserts, and if you have any suggestions on what I should make next, please let me know in the comment box below. So meanwhile, see you in the next one. Bye!